Coral is entirely new to Armored Core 6 and behaves like nothing we've had before, and there are secrets hiding in the Coral with huge gameplay implications. Today, we're going to cover 3 of them. The first secret to Coral weapons, and a big one, is they actually do true damage. That is, they totally ignore your opponent's defense stats, and a shout out to Cassis for helping me test this. I'll show you guys some clips of our testing. We're going to use both the Coral Rifle and the Coral Oscillator to test out the damage here, first against a heavyweight tank with lots of energy defense, and then again against a lightweight with way lower defense. And you'll see they end up doing the same damage. And that holds true for any of the Coral weapons. The missiles, blade, rifles, whatever it is. If it does Coral damage, it will ignore your opponent's defense stat. Though it is interesting to note that this is only entirely true in PvP. In PvE, when I tested it against arena opponents, there does seem to be some truth to it ignoring their defense, but it does seem like they have different tolerances. Somewhere in there's a hidden stat because Coral weapons will do different damage to different arena opponents, but will always do the same damage to PvE opponents. Another interesting thing, and I got this from Thrifty Death, I haven't tested it myself, but he did help me out with crunching some of the numbers and collecting some of the data for this, is that the OS tuning options that increase damage to both kinetic and energy weapons seem to affect Coral weapons in PvE. That is, Coral weapons will get more powerful from both of those different options. So Coral almost acts like a combination of both kinetic and energy weapons, at least in PvE, which will actually lead us right into our second secret. Coral isn't actually energy like we know it in Armored Core. Let's go ahead and take a look at the damage of the Coral Rifle. 465 damage on the Trainer AC, and I'm using the VE20B generator with maxed out energy firearm specialization. So let's go ahead and switch that for the Yaba that has half the firearm specialization. Still does 465 damage. So it's interesting, even though it looks like an energy weapon, it's not. It's a Coral weapon, and it's entirely unaffected by the energy firearm specialization stat, which opens up a lot of possibilities with your generators when you're building Coral-style AC builds. Our last secret today is that Coral generators actually have a huge effect on how your expansion parts work. They also give both your boosters and your expansions these awesome red visuals. But let's start out just testing some assault armor with the VE20B generator. You might can see there, we do 1545 damage. Let's go ahead and switch that for one of the Coral generators instead, this time the NGI. You'll see we do 2,209 damage. That's about a 43% increase in the damage of just our assault armor, only from changing to a Coral generator. And of course, a lot of this comes from it changing the assault armor's damage from energy to Coral damage, therefore ignoring defense, doing true damage, etc., etc. So if you think about the damage you're dealing with assault armor, it makes sense that switching it to Coral damage would have a significant impact. It isn't just your assault armor though. Switching to a Coral generator will actually increase the defensive abilities of both Pulse Protection and Pulse Armor. But again, a big thanks to Thrifty Death for doing a little bit of data mining for me so I can get some numbers behind this, as at least in the regards to Pulse Protection and Pulse Armor with a Coral generator, there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there, information that I've tried to replicate and just haven't been able to. I've heard running theories that switching to Coral will increase the defensive ability of both your primal armor and potentially your pulse armor by up to 50%, and that they will absorb 50% more damage. And in all the testing that I've done, I can't seem to replicate that. I haven't really been able to come across a way to prove that that's true at all, at least as far as how much damage they absorb or how long they last. That being said, considering that they're constantly degrading once you activate them, it is exceedingly difficult to test how much damage that they actually absorb and the data mining is very complex for it, so it's not something that we can easily look at as far as equipping a coral generator and what that difference would be. But to the best of my knowledge, there's not any difference in the actual base defense, and definitely not any difference in the base length of time that they're active. However, there is still a benefit to switching to a coral generator if you're using one of these two expansions, and that advantage lies in the damage that some weapon types do. See, some weapons have a PA interference stat, and that, especially for things like pulse guns, can just drain through a shield in no time flat. Which also, if you're struggling with Balteus, is a pro tip. But yeah, back on it, switching to a coral generator, and therefore your shields using coral energy instead, actually totally ignores PA interference as a stat. That is, things like pulse guns, which would normally eliminate primal armor literally in like a second, won't. You'll be able to sit there and tank the hits and look good doing it. Of course, the same holds true for pulse protection. You do get that barrier once it's triggered. It will change over into a coral barrier and therefore will have the same sort of defensive buff to not being affected by PA interference. Not that that one really matters. It has massive durability during its couple second window that it's active anyway, so it's probably something you won't ever really notice. But again, at least you'll look good doing it. And just as kind of a bonus secret, I would say, because I've already said it before in a different video that talks about changing your booster color, but changing into a coral generator will actually change the color of your boosters as well. While you can, of course, use the flame-colored boosters or the blue plasma boosters depending on the generator you pick, the coral generators are the only two in the game that will give you that red glowing coral fire color. I also want to say that when I talked about the coral generators in a previous video and kind of what they do, how they work, it was surprisingly divisive. I knew there'd be a little bit of debate on it, but it was definitely surprisingly divisive. That being said, they have been very popular in PvP tournaments, and a lot of the people who have won have used them to great success. I would say it's primarily due not because of the regen kind of mechanic behind it, but due to the massive capacity that they have. But that is certainly a topic for a different video, and you can look into how to change your booster colors as well as a little bit more about how the coral generators functions in some of my other videos. I'll drop the links to those below. So that is just 3 of the secrets hiding within the coral in Armored Core 6. It does true damage, and totally ignores your opponent's defense. It doesn't work like energy like we know it, and it completely ignores all those stats on your equipment that would otherwise affect energy, and it has the potential to drastically increase the power of your expansion parts. If you know any more secrets, drop those in the comments below. As usual, if you found this video helpful, and if you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.